Tonight, I invite you to journey back to the gaslit streets of Victorian London. Picture it, cobblestone alleys cloaked in fog, the flicker of lanterns barely piercing the darkness. In this place, where poverty and desperation collided, one of history's most chilling killers emerged. They called him Jack the Ripper. He wasn't the first murderer in London, but he was the first to terrify an entire city, capturing headlines and imaginations around the world. More than 130 years later, we still don't know who he was. But we know what he did. Let's step into the shadows and trace his bloody path. It was 1888 in Whitechapel, a district infamous for overcrowding, poverty, and crime. Imagine the noise: shouting vendors, horse hooves echoing through the alleys, the clatter of workhouses filled with the homeless. Life here was brutal, especially for women. Many turned to prostitution just to afford a night's lodging or a meal. They worked in dark corners where no one asked questions. And it was in those corners that Jack the Ripper struck. The first victim. On August 31st, Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly, was found dead. Her throat was slit so savagely it nearly severed her head. Her abdomen had been ripped open. When police arrived, they were shocked, but they couldn't have imagined this was only the beginning. Just over a week later, Annie Chapman met the same fate. But this time, her organs had been removed with a skill that suggested the killer knew anatomy. A doctor? A butcher? No one could say for sure. As summer turned to autumn, fear gripped Whitechapel. The press seized the story, printing sensational headlines that sold thousands of papers. Soon, the name Jack the Ripper appeared, signed at the bottom of a taunting letter sent to a news agency. This letter read, "I am down on whores, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled." And it was signed simply Jack the Ripper. Suddenly, the murders had a face, a name that would never be forgotten. On the night of September 30th, Jack the Ripper struck twice in under an hour. Elizabeth Stride's throat was cut, but her body was left relatively intact. Perhaps the killer was interrupted. Minutes later, Catherine Eddowes was discovered in Mitre Square. Her face and abdomen were mutilated in a frenzy. A piece of her apron was found nearby, along with cryptic graffiti scrawled on a wall. "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Detectives debated whether it was a clue or a cruel distraction. The final killing. On November 9th, Mary Jane Kelly, the youngest and most tragic of the victims, was murdered in her tiny room. Unlike the others, her mutilations were so extreme that seasoned investigators wept when they saw the scene. This was the last known killing. After Mary Jane Kelly, the Ripper vanished, leaving only questions. The investigation. Scotland Yard launched the most extensive manhunt the city had ever seen. They interviewed over 2,000 people, followed countless leads, and sifted through mountains of letters. Witnesses described a man of medium height, wearing a dark overcoat and a hat, carrying a small black bag. But there were dozens of conflicting descriptions, and no real evidence. Detectives struggled without modern tools like fingerprinting or DNA analysis. Every promising lead crumbled into dust. The suspects and theories. Over the years, more than 100 suspects have been named. Here are a few. Montague John Druitt, a barrister who took his own life shortly after the last murder. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish barber with a history of mental illness. Some modern investigators claim DNA on Catherine Eddowes' shawl links him to the crimes, though many experts dispute this. Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria, has inspired conspiracy theories, although historians find no evidence he was involved. Others have suggested a failed medical student, a vengeful midwife, or even a deranged American doctor. No theory has ever been proven. Jack the Ripper wasn't just a killer. He was the first modern media sensation. His crimes inspired fear, outrage, and fascination. He changed the way police approached murder investigations. And he showed the world the power of the press to shape a narrative and a legend. Even today, Whitechapel draws tourists retracing his footsteps. Books, movies, and TV shows reimagine his story again and again. He remains the ultimate bogeyman, faceless, unknowable, unstoppable.